All right. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. I am Courtney.
And I'm Av.
And welcome to EnvironMental Podcast.
This is our podcast where we deep dive into different aspects of sustainability. And recently we've been doing a lot of interviews with really fantastic people.
Yes. So today we're joined by Gillian Pereira, who is the lead researcher at the Business Pickle. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, our pleasure. So can you tell us a little bit about the Business Pickle and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So the Business Pickle is a new business research advisory, and we're really here to help business leaders that are ready to do good. And as you can probably tell from my accent, our team is based in Australia, but what we're trying to do is bring together global perspectives on issues related to how businesses can really improve their social, environmental impacts and make a difference to people and the planet. And so the way we do that is we produce all kinds of in-depth research reports on a bunch of topics that we find interesting and we think are really relevant today. And we present that in podcasts, videos, we run workshops, we feature case studies, all sorts of things to really equip leaders with what they need to keep progressing forward.
Fantastic. My gosh. So you're essentially, providing just very detailed information to businesses about sustainability. So I guess, how do you choose the topics to research?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've just released our first season of research, and in that we covered corporate giving, we looked at food waste, and we also looked at packaging. In terms of the way we choose topics, it's a bit of a mix of issues that we see as really relevant and important for businesses, things that we hear people like leaders around us are saying, hey, these are really tricky areas for us. We're really trying to solve for this in our business. And also it's a little bit of a selfish reason, is just that we want to research things that are really interesting and that we think other people will find interesting too. So that also definitely plays a part.
Yeah.
Wow.
It definitely can relate to just like choosing the thing that's interesting you.
Yes.
On Living Bread Directory, we have a post type where it's just like, what am I curious about right now?
Exactly. Yeah. And we kind of figure if we're interested in how businesses can solve these different, what we call pickles, then bound to be others that are in the same boat. So, yeah.
So I guess, how do you approach the research?
Yeah, so the way we go about it is we combine primary research in the form of interviews. So we reach out to different leaders and experts within that topic, and we have a chat to them to really understand what they're doing on the ground, what they've learned through business, and also what the latest kind of findings are in the practical world of business on that topic. And then we also combine that with secondary research. So we read a lot of articles, research papers, academic journals to really understand what's the evidence base here, rather than just kind of plucking out ideas from the sky. We really want to ground it in evidence, in what the kind of the latest research is telling us. And then we basically bring those two things together to kind of illuminate the topic, add some case studies in to really bring it to life.
That's fascinating. And I think really topical and necessary because it's really challenging. I think one of the things I am really curious about is the difficulty of operating a business that's successful and also making a positive impact in the world. With Dandelion, that's like the people we work with that do that. And we obviously do it through marketing and we help people grow that way. But actually being the boots on the ground and being a force for good in the world is so challenging. What do you think in your research or what you've learned is the most helpful thing for a business that actually wants to make an impact?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I totally hear you in terms of like how businesses actually go about doing it practically is quite different from maybe setting an impact agenda or having an idea of what they want to do. And it really depends on where the business is coming from. So we've, talked to leaders who are in kind of more legacy businesses where the business has been running for decades and they're now just kind of trying to implement a lot of changes within their businesses to improve their social environmental impact. So that comes with a whole bunch of challenges around how you operationalize it. For one example, we spoke to like a restaurant chain that's introduced a food distribution program, and they had to start with a really small trial and just get a real sense of teamwork and people believing in the concept, believing in the idea and seeing that it could practically work on the ground. And from there, then they were able to tweak it slightly and scale up. So sometimes it's just a case of like change management, project management to implement changes at a small scale, learn from them, and then like grow it through the business. And then for businesses that, maybe it's really like your example of your marketing business and how you've really built that in from the ground up. And that comes with, some benefits because you're able to be aware of these things from the start. And as businesses grow, they're a bit more flexible to pivot to new ways of doing things when it's not such a large business. So for them, I think that like what we've seen is like staying up to date with kind of a network of businesses that are working in this space to improve their impact really helps. And also finding frameworks or certifications or programs that can help you in whatever area of impact you're wanting to make. So rather than trying to like reinvent the wheel, there are so many resources out there to help businesses. So, you don't have to try and create all these things yourself. You can find what the networks are, what the certifications and frameworks are that can really help you.
That's cool. Do you have a favorite like place to go for frameworks for impact or?
It really, great question. It really depends on the topic, I suppose. Like what we're trying to create at the Business Pickle is a place where people can come and find all those different frameworks and actions and ideas kind of together on whatever topic they're wanting to learn from. But just to pluck one example out of this is on the packaging topic, where we looked at, this big problem of packaging. It's all around us. It seems pretty difficult to solve because it's just so complex and widespread, packaging waste, all the materials that we're using. And so when we were diving into that topic, we uncovered some really good frameworks from the MacArthur Foundation as an example, and then the Cradle to Cradle certified program. And they were really impressive in terms of how they could step businesses through the journey of kind of progress over perfection, as we like to say.
Yeah.
Which is great. And then obviously there are things like the B Corp certification and others that businesses can embark on to have that tracking against how they're progressing as a business.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. I've never heard of the MacArthur program, so I made a note to look that up as well.
Yeah, they're brilliant. Yeah, they do a lot around packaging and circular economy solutions, but lots of resources to dive into.
Great.
So how do you work with businesses? Like, do businesses come to you to seek out the research that you're working on, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there are a whole bunch of ways that we kind of support businesses and come alongside them on their journey. So it can be as simple as like a lunch and learn, you might call it, or a workshop, just to engage the team on a topic that's relevant to them of something we've researched, or just more generally around, what it looks like to do business for good and what the kind of the broad narrative on that is. And so then if businesses have an idea of like, hey, this is it's packaging, just to use that example again, we're really working on our packaging and we know what we're trying to achieve, but we want that stronger evidence base. We want to really unpack what's going on here. then we can kind of step them through more of a roadmap for change on, might be a year-long program of how they can implement changes along the way. And so we can kind of support with different resources. But for other businesses, they just know they want to do better, but they're not quite sure where to do better or how to do better. And so that's almost taking a step back and having a look at, what's involved in all their operations as a business, and where can they really make the most impact with some changes. And so all different ways to come alongside businesses wherever they're at in their journey. So it's really a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's incredible, though, that you get, kind of depending on where they are in their journey, you're able to support them to get more information and make it more tangible, make their actual.
Right.
Yeah. That was what I definitely found most interesting, looking at the research from, I think it was at your first batch of research. Where that was the main problem, was that folks, had all these goals, but didn't know how to make them a reality, and didn't know how to put the process into place. And we've been chatting to more and more folks who have kind of been working on frameworks to make the transition more tangible. So it's really exciting to hear that, you're really arming people with a lot of data and important research and information to be able to create a roadmap for their own business.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. And we are just learning a lot along the way, and we're at the beginning of this journey. So we're learning as much as the businesses that we support are learning. Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah, we all are. I think like we're in this sort of like precipice of information, right? Like this kind of work didn't exist before just a couple of years ago. It hasn't really been thought of. Like being a pioneer in an industry is kind of weird, because you have to sort of, especially one that's interdisciplinary, like working with businesses that are all different and all have their own issues, right? You're like, I have to learn about that too. Like, I have to be the person that brings all this information together to share it and make it's kind of a packaging in and of itself, right? There's all these little bits of sustainable information out there, but I think it's people in businesses like yours or like ours that kind of put it together and make it accessible that are really necessary for the transition. And we're seeing a lot of that starting to come up.
Yes.
And it's like,
I agree with that. Yeah. And it's a great thing to see, isn't it? And it does feel like this is really shifting from a nice to have for businesses to a must have. And there's a much more focus being put on it. There's more expectation from different stakeholders that are connected to that business to see what impact they're having. So it's a really exciting time for this. And just as you say, it's there's so much information out there, but sometimes the challenge is just knowing what to focus on, where to direct your efforts, and get clarity in that process.
Because everything has to change, So is there something that people come to you, I guess, what do you see most often that the question you get asked, or like the focus people have most often, like packaging or waste or?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Packaging is a big one. We actually recently surveyed business leaders to get a bit of a sense check on where they're at, what the issues are that they're dealing with. And some of the common themes and challenges that came through were climate action, number one, which is not surprising given its importance and its relevance to all of us. Packaging and waste ranked really highly as well. So that's obviously tying in with one of the topics we've already explored, but there's more to unpack there. And also always. And then equity and diversity was another one that businesses are really grappling with at the moment. So there's some of the big themes and challenges that we're seeing.
I appreciate, and I think that this is very common, but I really appreciate that you're including equity and diversity just within, your business scope of sustainability and helping businesses move in that way, because it's really important. We're seeing it more often like just in the sustainable industry, like the networks that we're building, and I really appreciate it. But we haven't always been seeing it outside of that. So it's cool that when a business comes to you, you say, have you also thought about like this piece, and how equity and diversity and like bringing in different voices from different people and really listening to people have an impact on your sustainability? So that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's so interconnected. Even like any issue of social environmental impact that's affecting people's lives, whether they're within your business or they're connected to your business through being a customer or a client or more widely. And it's such an essential piece of the puzzle to think about how we're including people, how we like making space for different ideas and perspectives. And just that thing of stepping outside the echo chamber that we can so easily kind of fall into.
Yep. Yep. So we read a little bit about, your recent findings and, people giving money to nonprofits, maybe not having the impact, and also just like the gap between intention and actual like the ability to do good. And I'd like to know a little bit more specifically about giving, corporate giving, and the best ways to go about that, and how to like incorporate that into sustainability.
Yeah, sure. So corporate giving is not a new idea. And when we say corporate giving, we're talking about businesses that donate, whether it's with dollars or with goods or time, donate in some way to the nonprofit sector. And so what we were really looking at with that question was, it actually came out of a conversation between myself and one of the other founders. And we were discussing a business that we both knew of that had drastically changed their giving model, the way that they gave. And they really shifted from what's known as a tied funding model, where you say, hey, I'm going to give you X number of dollars, and I want you to put it all onto this specific project. So it might be, I want you to plant this many trees, or we want you to build this many wells to provide water to this community. And that's really admirable. But there are some challenges with tied funding, and in terms of how much freedom it gives the nonprofits to actually make wider system changes, because maybe what they really need in that community isn't 3 more wells. Maybe it's that they need an education program, or they need to set up a way for people to be able to repair their wells when they break down without needing more external support to come in. So that's just a random example.
Yeah.
But a lot of nonprofits are feeling hamstrung by the way that funding is given to them. And so we were exploring some alternative models to that. And one of them is unrestricted funding, which is really based on trust. It's based on longer timescales and looking at what's the actual impact we want to achieve at the end of the day, instead of just what are the activities that we want to see happen. So in that context, it might be, hey, we actually want to see more people getting safe access to water. And so there are lots of things involved in making that happen. So that's just, one example of something we learned through that topic.
Unrestricted funding, I think that's relatively new. We have a nonprofit client that, when we help them seek funding, it's a lot of language to help get unrestricted funding for exactly this reason, because they do get hamstrung,
Yes.
Like, access to water is a huge goal, and just having more water isn't always the solution. So
yes.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. And it's there was a study that looked at nonprofit leaders and basically how much desire there is in the industry or in the sector for unrestricted funding, but only a minority are receiving it. And those that are receiving it, again, it's a minority of what they're getting. So there's such a big opportunity here to think about, of all the different issues that we want to support and that the nonprofit sector is working on, how can we kind of do the most to release people to achieve the best outcomes.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh man, I would love to help build plans like that. That'd be so cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Making real change happen. Yeah. Wow. I guess, so what are you currently working on? What are you currently researching?
Yeah, so we're working on our second season at the moment of topics which are in progress, one of which is on the question of carbon neutral, carbon negative. What does that all mean? Is that something businesses should really prioritize? Is it greenwashing? How does all that fit together? And so we're just at the early stages. We've done a couple of research interviews and some initial scoping research, but that's shaping up to be a really interesting topic. It's a bit of a buzzword, I think, and just wanting to really kind of look under the hood and understand what does it mean, what to look for, what's important on that one. And then we're also looking at environmental responsibility in the fashion industry, because as you might know, there's a huge amount of environmental negative impact from that industry, huge amounts of waste, all the resources that go into it. And so we're really wanting to understand what's best practice look like. How can businesses in the industry actually shift the dial on some of the really negative practices that we've seen, the fast fashion movement and alternatives that are rising up to that. So that's shaping up to be a really interesting one as well. And then we're also looking at a question around housing. So how can we build more inclusive, more sustainable housing that's affordable, that's accessible to people, which is something that we've found really interesting from when we started the Business Pickle. And so we're looking forward to learning more about that. So watch this space.
Yes.
Yeah, I am really excited to learn more about, we know a lot about the negative impact of fashion, but there aren't a lot of tangible solutions for larger businesses there yet.
Yeah.
So,
and just what we're seeing initially, go
ahead.
Sorry. Just around how there are so many great smaller fashion labels that are springing up that are really, again, baking in sustainability from the outset. But you're right, how do these big businesses shift on that? And I think we are seeing some signs of change, but again, they're still at the trial phase and it's a bit slow and it's not really a full systems change yet. So it's an interesting one to tackle.
Yeah, and I'd love to see real data there too. When we were just talking about how interesting it is, because when we started EnvironMental, this podcast, we started with talking about fashion and deforestation and food and agriculture. And you kind of start to realize how much of a web and interconnected everything is once you start diving into this topic.
Yes.
And we did look into secondary research as much as we could about the environmental impact of fashion, but it's so difficult to get real facts and figures.
Yes.
About that impact.
Right.
There's
so many third party vendors that are not appropriately, notated, I guess, and a lot of these larger businesses, they'll make lots of claims and say they only work with certain manufacturers, but then those manufacturers subcontract out to other manufacturers. Right. And there's a lot of ways where you can hide things. So as more and more folks start to research that industry, I'm very excited for what you will find.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes to that broader question of supply chains in general. They're so complex in the world today. And even for a business with, putting its best foot forward, doing its best efforts to find out exactly what's happening across its supply chain, that takes a huge investment of time, energy, needing the accountability from not just your direct suppliers, but as you say, all the suppliers and contractors that they work with. It's so complicated. So it's definitely a pickle that we're keen to unpack.
I love the name, by the way. I think it's brilliant. There's no better way to describe it. I love it. Yeah. A lot of pickles.
There are. Really excited to like stay in touch and keep watching and learning more from you guys than about different ways businesses can make differences, because I think corporate responsibility is super important. We can harp all day on, the human side or the individual part, but when it comes down to it, like money talks, and corporations make really big differences in the world. So I think it makes perfect sense to be like, hey, you and your business, here's how you can make a difference.
Yes. And the businesses that we're really we think can make a big difference are those ones that are already motivated to make a change. I think we're seeing more and more businesses that genuinely want to shift on these things. And so if we can mobilize them and help them on their way, just collectively, I think there's going to be such a huge opportunity there. And hopefully the ones that are a bit slower to move will see that things are shifting and they need to catch up as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That will be the competitive edge. It already is, definitely. We're seeing it, but it will certainly continue to move that way. And which is exciting. Yeah.
For sure.
Really, it's a lot of things coming to light. So
yeah, for sure.
Wow. My gosh.
Yeah.
We're just looking at our notes here. We
pick
up a lot of notes of everything that you've been working on.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Anything exciting coming up, or anything else that you guys are doing? Or this will come out in, I think, the middle of October. So is there anything you want to announce, or
Yeah, well, we have recently launched, so that's been pretty exciting for us, and people can feel free to check out our upcoming season of research, which should be releasing November, December time. And we've also recently hosted our first panel event and are planning to host more of those. So definitely keep an eye out and register to come along to the next one when we put out some more information.
Absolutely. Can you let people know how they can find you? I would love to go to a panel.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is thebusinesspickle.com. And if you just Google The Business Pickle, it should come up there as well. We're on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, the regular places, generally at The Business Pickle, or search our name and you'll find us. We've got a newsletter you can subscribe to stay in the loop. And we'd love to hear from you as well if you're interested in unpacking more of these topics, or if people even have a topic that they want to suggest that we research. We just would really love to hear people's ideas.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, incredible. Wow. Well, we'll definitely keep our eyes and ears open for topics and send over some things that we're hearing on the ground.
We love that.
Yeah,
it's great.
We always have questions that we want to know more about. So
we'll go away, we'll do the research, and we'll let you know. Let you know the answers.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, Gillian, thank you.
It's lovely to meet you both. Really, really nice to chat.
Yeah, it's been really lovely to get to know you a little bit. And thank you everyone for listening. If you like this type of content and you want to know more about how to add sustainability to your life and hear from more professionals on the topic, please subscribe. It makes a really big difference for the YouTube algorithm.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.